Well, good morning. Great to see everyone here. It's good to be back in the flesh with you. Hope you enjoyed. Did a little live stream action last week from Pittsburgh, so that was fun. Jeff Winters is one of my great friends. He's a mentor for me, and we talk pretty much on a weekly basis. And it's always fun to be with him. And I know we got some good feedback from Pittsburgh last week, so I hope you all enjoyed it, and there wasn't too much of a lag, too Godzilla-like in our mouths moving. Well, hey, today we are going to begin a new series. This will be our summer series. Been talking about this now for a couple of weeks. Audience Choice Summer Series. All of the questions that you have been asking over the past couple of weeks, and we still have about 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks left. So if you do have any other questions, things that you would like to see us address here in a sermon on a Sunday morning, please send those over. The schedule is filling up, but we do have room for another question or two. So I think we have slips of paper in the back. You can write your question, place it in the box. You can send me an email as well. Today, we'll begin with a question that I hear often. How do I hear God's voice? Now, this one, we could spend lots of time unpacking it. So we shall go over some of the highlights, and then I want to share my own personal journey with this in hopes that it helps you make sense of God's voice, God's leading in your life. Let's begin with a question. Why would I want to hear God's voice? When someone asks the question, or when someone says, I want to hear God's voice, what are some of the reasons why we would want to hear the voice of God? And this is your participation part. So why would anyone here this morning, why would you want to hear the voice of God? To know God is with us, guidance, decisions, help, obedience, confirmation. Yeah, lots of different reasons. I put a couple here. I think you pretty much covered all of it. Guidance. Some wisdom, which we will talk about wisdom next week. Comfort, God is with us. We want to know that God's Spirit is walking with us. Sometimes we need some healing. What about correction? I love that. Obedience. Correction sounds like a bad thing, but the truth is we want to know if we're walking down a path that isn't leading us in a good direction. I think most of us truly we don't like the idea of correction, but I would argue that many of us, if not most of us, we want to know that we are walking the path that God has for us, the path that leads to life, and then deepening your connection with God. Now, here's a foundational truth that I begin this idea with. Remember the question, how do I hear God's voice? Here is a foundational truth to begin with. God speaks, God communicates. So in order for you to hear God's voice, well, obviously, the foundational truth under that has to be that God is communicating, that God is speaking. So this is where I start this morning. Now, here's a couple examples in the Bible, because all throughout the Bible, you have example after example, countless ways in which people have heard from God. And what you will discover is that there is no one way. Maybe we could even say there's no particularly right way. Someone may hear from God in a certain way, while someone else may hear from God in a completely different way. One of my professors in seminary, he often would ask, how do you hear from God? And how you hear from God, it might be different than your neighbor. And so if you read the Bible, as we read through Scripture, we find story after story of people's personal experiences of hearing from God. Here's a few ways in which people have heard from God. Here's Psalm 19, starting in verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, the heavens, they pour forth speech. Have you ever thought about the heavens speaking to you? Staring up at the sky and hearing their speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. How is it that God sometimes speaks? Through creation. Wordless speaking. something that you know, that you feel, that you sense within you. You ever stare up at a sunrise or a sunset, you see a mountain, a lake, a body of water, and there is just something that it does within you, and you're captivated by beauty or the immensity of it all? What about your smallness in the midst of this giant universe that we are living in? Thousands of years ago, a poet writes, God speaks through creation, through nature. How about this one? Hebrews 1. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets. How did God speak in the past? Through prophets. Men, women who were spokespeople of God. Many times, and again, here it is, various ways. God spoke in various ways. The task, the challenge, or the invitation, we could say, is for you to figure out let's call it the dominant way in which God speaks to you. Because sometimes we just say, well, there's one way that God can speak, and then we just neglect all the other ways that God can speak. But I think there is a dominant way in which God speaks to all of us. And so the invitation is to figure out what is the normal way that God speaks to us without forgetting or neglecting all the other ways in which God can speak. In these last days, he has spoken to us by Jesus, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being. If we want to know what God is like, who God is, we look to the person of Jesus. How did Jesus live in the world? How did Jesus act? How did Jesus communicate and interact with others? What are the teachings of Jesus? How does God speak? I mean, clearly through the Bible. Yes, of course. We read the Bible because we want to learn and we want to hear from God. And what we find here in Hebrews is the author is saying it is through Jesus, knowing Jesus, understanding who Jesus is, reading about Jesus, that we come to an understanding of God and can hear the guidance, the wisdom that God is inviting us to participate in. Here's another way. Job 33. For God does speak, and here it is again, now one way, now another. God spoke this way, now God speaks this way, though no one perceives it. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds, and you thought you were doing nothing when you were laying down on that pillow at night. What we find here is that God speaks in dreams while we're sleeping. You ever woke up in the morning and there's just this impression that you have, I need to do this. I need to contact this person. Maybe it's not even the morning, but maybe you were woken up in the middle of the night and you had this strong sense to make this decision. Or maybe there was something that you were praying on, that you were asking God for wisdom, for direction on, and you woke up and you found that answer. It just sort of came to you in that moment. What people have been saying for thousands of years, God speaks this way and this way. God speaks while you are sleeping, in dreams and visions. And then maybe my favorite one, Numbers 22. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth, and it said to Balaam, what have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times? God speaks through a donkey? You ever go to the zoo and you're like, wait, am I hearing things? What's going on over here? Yeah, God speaks through all creation. Maybe we could say it this way. God is speaking all the time in everything. God uses every single opportunity to speak to humanity. Many, many different ways. We have the burning bush with Moses as he's walking by. It's like, what's going on with that bush? Why is that bush speaking to me? God speaks in silence, conversations with others. What about movies, books, music? You ever listen to a song and there's just something within you? You're inspired. You feel a sense of peace, of comfort. When we're here this morning, we come together and we sing, we worship, because there's something about singing these words. There's something about hearing the truths of God sung over us. And something about us doing it together in unison. Something is, maybe we could say, unlocked within us. We see things differently. There's a picture of the world, a picture of our lives that we are able to glimpse, that maybe when we're just going through life, the normal time, we don't have that picture, but then we come together and we carve out space, we create this space, and I'm going to switch my microphone. So in every single moment, God is speaking, which then raises a question for us. If God is always speaking, if God is always communicating, are we listening? Put another way, have we developed the muscles to listen? You go to the gym because you want to develop physical muscles, but just like working out, going to the gym, developing those muscles, listening from God is also a form of exercise. And the more we can develop these muscles, the more we can recognize how God is speaking to each one of us, the more we're able to listen in the moment and recognize the voice of God in our own lives. So let me share my personal journey with this. You all know I started a church. You're here this morning in the church that I started. And back when I was beginning to think about Awaken, do I want to start a church? Should I start a church? Does God want me to start a church? Is this something that God is leading me into? I had no clear answer. And I had been praying about it for quite a while. I had this idea, and that's how it starts. You have this idea, and then it begins to formulate and take shape a bit. But in the beginning, it was just this idea, and I wasn't hearing a clear, yes, go for it. I also wasn't hearing a clear, no, don't do this, go, you're crazy, go try and do something else. So I was conflicted. I had no idea. Should I start this thing called Awaken, or should I pursue a different path? And then I came across this. It was in the introduction, or I think it was in the dedication, actually, of a book that I was reading. And here's what I read that just opened up the door for me. If you don't hear no, go for it. I was reading a book by another church planter, by someone else who had started a church long before me. And he apparently was wrestling with the same question that I was. Should I start a church? Is this the path that God has for me? And apparently for him as well, he didn't have a clear yes, but he also didn't have a clear no. And the advice that was given to him was, well, if you don't hear no, if the door is not being closed, well then go for it. And when I read that, there was something within me. I resonated exactly with that message. And I decided, okay, I am going to start Awaken. And here we are 15, 16 years later, all because I hadn't heard no, and I decided to go for it. Then a little bit later in my journey, I came across someone who offered 3 ways to hear from God. 3 ways to you this morning, because this was another step for me that made a lot of sense for how to hear and how to distinguish God's voice. So here are 3 ways to distinguish God's voice when you aren't hearing a clear yes or a clear no. First, what is it that makes you angry? When you're wondering, what is the path? What is the direction that God is leading me down? Ask yourself this question. What makes me angry? Where is there this sense of injustice in the world around you? where you look at a situation, you look at something and you say, something isn't right about this. Someone should go do something about it. When I think about me starting Awaken, this is a very relevant question, because the reason I started Awaken was because I was talking to a lot of people, and I felt like, from what they were telling me, what they were communicating to me, is that they didn't fit anywhere in a church. They could not find a church where they could go and explore their questions and explore a way of pursuing God and following Jesus that worked for them. They were curious. They had these questions. They had this desire. They wanted to be a part of a community. They wanted to learn. They wanted to grow. They wanted to explore their faith, but they were unable to find a place where they felt as if they fit. And the more I heard this, the more people that communicated this idea to me, the more angry it made me inside. Well, something isn't right about this. Why can't this group, why can't my friends, the people that I'm talking with, why can't they find a spiritual community where they can pursue Jesus in their own way? And this it made my blood boil a little bit. I was angry about it. I said, something isn't right. I have to do something about it. So when you think about where is it that God is leading you, are there any particular places that you look at and there is something just doesn't feel right? And you wish that someone, that one being you, would do something about the situation. Here's another question. What are you passionate about? There's a reason that you have those passions. They didn't just drop out of space into your soul. There is a reason that you care about something. There's a reason that some idea, makes your heart beat a little bit faster. For me, this was very true when I started thinking about beginning a church. I was a bit angry. Something wasn't right about the situation, what I was hearing, and I wanted to do something about it. And the dream of starting a church, the dream of Awaken, is something that just made me come alive. And I think that's what we all want. We all want to be involved in something that makes us come alive, that makes us wake up. The name Awaken, awakening from a deep slumber. The dreams that you have in your heart of what your life could look like, of what life could look like for others. I would suggest that that is a dream planted in your heart by God. And the dreams that you have for a future reality, a world, a situation that looks different than what you're experiencing or what you're seeing right now, that's planted in your heart by God. And what I have learned is to go after that dream, that vision. I have come to discover that God is in that dream. And so again, if you don't hear no, because there's some dreams that you do have to close the door on. Of course there are. I used to want to be a professional baseball player. Well, I clearly heard a no on that one. About like 7th grade, maybe 8th grade. So some dreams the door just has to close on. But if the door isn't closing, if you don't hear a no, go and pursue it. See what happens. There's a reason you have that passion, that desire in your heart. I would suggest that is a divine passion and dream that has been planted in your bones. And then here's a third question to ask. What are you curious about? I love this one. People sometimes ask me, how do you come up with sermons? It's the things that I'm curious about. I have an idea. I want to explore something. There's a particular book of the Bible. There's a certain idea that sounds interesting to me. I want to learn about it. And then I get to communicate what I'm learning with all of you. I love it. It's great. I started a church because I was curious. I wanted to go deeper in my faith. I wanted to learn more about the Christian faith and about the way of Jesus. So my curiosity ultimately is what sparked Awaken. We're all here this morning because of my curiosity. And what I did 15, 16 years ago, the way in which I lived 15, 16 years ago, that's the way in which I'm still continuing to live. There's a reason that certain things pique your interest. There's a reason why you're curious about certain topics or ideas, or why you have certain questions. Someone once told me, whenever you're coming up with a sermon series, read through the passage of the Bible that you want to preach on and write all the questions that you have about that passage. And then begin to answer those questions. Study those questions. Explore those questions. Investigate those questions. There is a reason why you are curious about certain things, the things that interest you. Pursue that curiosity. God is in the curiosity. Now, let's look at this question. How do we cultivate a way to listen? First, you need an intentional practice. Just walking about your day with no intentionality, oftentimes you're going to miss the voice of God. You need to be intentional in order to cultivate a way to listen to God. So here's 2 ways that have worked for me. First, you have to slow down and pay attention. Whenever my life is going at warp speed, I often miss God. I miss the voice of God. Whenever I'm cramming as much into my schedule as I possibly can, I'm going from here to here to here, life just feels, the depth to life, it doesn't exist. There's a shallowness to existence. But when I move a little slower, when I'm paying attention to what's happening around me, when I'm actually listening to the people that I'm communicating with, because you can talk with people and not listen to them. You ever been there before? You have a conversation, and you're like, whoa, wait, I just talked to so-and-so, and I don't remember a single word that they said. So we've all been there before. But when we slow down, when we're intentional about slowing down and paying attention to every moment that we're passing, I believe that is the best way that we can cultivate this discipline of listening to God. So for me, 15, 16 years ago, every single morning, I would go for a walk in the woods. Me, myself, 30 minutes, go into the woods. And here's what I noticed about that walk. It wasn't as if sometimes I would fill up a notebook with what I was hearing, the things that I was thinking, but this would help me throughout the rest of my day. Think about it. When you go to the gym, your muscle isn't necessarily building in that moment. The muscle builds after you work out, as your muscles are repairing themselves. You're ripping the muscles apart at the gym, and then after your workout is over, they're repairing themselves, and they're becoming toned, they're becoming bigger. If you want to become a bodybuilder, whatever it is that you're going to the gym for, it happens after the workout. So what I noticed about walking in the woods is, yes, I would often fill a notebook and I would hear things, I have impressions and senses, but it helped me throughout my entire day to move a little slower and to pay more attention to what I was passing. So the first way to listen from God, you need an intentional practice. And I would suggest it's a practice of being silent so that you can be in a posture of listening throughout the rest of the day. I do think it happens best in the morning to begin your morning this way, but if you can't do morning, find some time middle of the day or at night. But this then helps with the rest of your life to create a posture of listening. And then here's the second way. You test the spirits. Because some of the things that you're hearing, the truth is they're not of God. And sometimes there's other voices that are speaking into our lives, and they aren't the true voice of God. And sometimes we think that they are, but we come to realize, well, that really wasn't God's voice. That was my neighbor's voice. That was my parents' voice. That was my own voice in this. So you have to test the spirits, develop the muscles. 1 John, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this, here's how you test the spirits. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. everything that you're hearing compared to Jesus? Does this sound like the way of Jesus? Does this sound like something that Jesus would give his life to, that Jesus would participate in? Is this true? The things that I read about Jesus in the Gospels, is what I'm hearing, does it align with his teachings? Who he was, how he lived his life? If it aligns with the way of Jesus, well, then it's from God. It's a true spirit. If it doesn't align with the way of Jesus, well, chances are maybe you need to refine your listening a bit. And one way that has truly helped me to test the spirits, I have a group of people that I can bounce ideas off of. Jeff Winters, you all met him last week from Pittsburgh. He is one of my go-tos. If I'm hearing, sensing something, I will call Jeff up after I've wrestled through it a bit on my own, and I'll say, hey, Jeff, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? And he'll tell me, Dave, I think you're spot on. Dave, I think you're dead wrong. It's helpful to have people in your life who you trust, that after you've wrestled with some of this on your own, you can then approach them and say, what do you think about this? So for me, when I started Awaken, I had a group of people, and I approached them and I said, hey, I'm thinking of starting a church. What do you think? And you know what happened? Every single person I approached about it said, this sounds like it's from God. Go for it. Go for it. We all need that group of people in our life. That's why Awaken exists. That's why we have different groups. That's why community group will begin again in September. We'll begin our Bible study again in September, because we need every single one of us together to help us on this journey, to make sure that we're hearing correctly and that we're in alignment with the way of Jesus. Now, for Awaken, as I mentioned, I've been going since 2010 when I started wrestling through this idea. So we're about 15 years into this experiment. I don't think it's an experiment any longer, but it often feels that way because over the past 15 years, there have been many different phases of Awaken. Different iterations of Awaken, of what it looked like. In the beginning, it was in my apartment. We were there for a while. Then we moved down to the basement of this next apartment that I moved into. We went to the cafe. We had different versions of Awaken, and there have been many different changes. For anyone who's been here from the beginning, you've been here pretty early on. Obviously, my wife has been integral part of it from the very beginning. You have seen many different versions of Awaken, and where we are today, chances are, won't be where we are 15 years from now. It's going to keep changing and morphing, and that's okay because the church, it's a living organism. It's not a static building. It's a living organism, and we together we determine what the church needs in every single season. So Awaken has needed something different in every different season that has existed in the life of Awaken. But throughout all of it, throughout every single change, the question that I have been asking myself always has been, is God still in this? Is God still in Awaken? Is Awaken to keep going? And obviously, the answer has always been yes. I've never heard a clear no, it's time to stop Awaken, and so I have just kept going. And as we come to 2025, I need to present to all of you our financial reality of where Awaken happens to be. So I have 4 charts, 4 graphs for us in order to show you where Awaken is. Here's the first one. So here is our balances from 2023 up till present day. Actually ends the end of May. And as you'll notice, January 2023, we had in the bank about $100,000. And that number has steadily decreased throughout the years. Last year was kind of an odd year. Then beginning of 2025, back up here to about 60,000. But now we are starting to come down a little bit more from what we had in the bank 2 years ago to where we are today. So this decrease has continued, and unfortunately, we are in a down to the right position here with how much is in our bank account. Second chart, this shows this a bit more. This blue line is for every single year the beginning balance, and this is an orange line. The orange line is where we ended the year. So as you can see, from 2022 all the way down to 2024, the beginning balance has significantly dropped where the ending balance was at the end of the year. Now, when we look at this and project giving and expenses, we look back at 2022, you'll notice our expenses higher than our giving, and this is a trend that has continued. Pretty sizable gap here in 2023. Closed the gap a bit last year, but here projected for 2025 is a pretty large gap between giving and expenses. And if we were to project out, again, 2025, you'll notice that right up here, you would just take this. This is where we currently stand right now, but if we were to look to the end of the year, the expenses would be all the way up here and the giving would be down here. So this is not a good trend, if you haven't picked up on that. This is a concerning trend, something that we have been paying attention to for quite a while, and we've been trying to communicate as best as we can over the past couple of months and years where we stand, where we are, and if you're a Star Trek fan, I guess we'll say it's been yellow alert for a while, but we're beginning to turn the tide from the yellow alert to the red alert, and as a board, basically, we've been asking this question: is God still in Awaken? The question that I've asked for 15 years through every different change and version of Awaken. And the question is God still in this? The question I've been asking myself. And if you're wondering, well, exactly who is the board? Mary Hillary is part of the board, Ted Thorbeck, my dad, Fred Stradling, and Lois Rubico, who is not here with us this morning. And Christine Shu has been our treasurer for the past 2+ years. And the question is God still in this? And here is how we have answered the question. We still believe yes. I believe yes. I'm not ready to throw in the towel on Awaken, yet the board feels the exact same way. But given that decision, we basically feel that given our current outlook, we can only continue through September, which is 4 more months, or July, August, 3 more months, if our financial situation, expenses and offerings stay the same. We can guarantee 3 months. It's questionable beyond that. We feel there's a good chance that we could go another month or 2, but definitely September, we know we can make it through. So if the situation doesn't change, then Awaken has a shelf life, and it's coming up pretty quickly. We have said that our budget is currently as lean as we can go. We have looked at the budget. Every year we look at our budget and we say, where can we cut things? Where can we get leaner? And we don't feel as if there's really anything in the budget that we can cut. We cannot get any leaner than we already are. So where does that leave us? Here are the steps that we are taking as a board to keep Awaken going. And if there's anything that you remember from this conversation, there's probably a lot, I want you to remember that our commitment, my commitment, and the commitment of the board is to keep Awaken going. We will do what we can to keep things going, but we realize it can't just fall on us, it falls on all of us to keep Awaken going. So here are the steps that we are committed to. The first one is this: we are trusting that God is still in Awaken. So we are approaching this from a position of trust. As we've been praying about it, talking about it, reflecting on it, we feel it is still something that we desire to see continue, and something we believe God desires to see continue. We believe there are more stories, more lives to be changed and transformed through Awaken. So the first step is we are trusting that God is still in Awaken. And that is our bedrock. That's the foundation that we are approaching this from. Second, we realize we need to have continued advertising and exposure to Awaken because we need to grow our giving base in order for Awaken to be sustainable. In other words, we need numeric growth for Awaken in order to continue. We've been feeling this for a while. Obviously, now we come to this point and realize, okay, we need to have a larger base so that we can sustain the budget and that we can sustain Awaken moving forward. So we have our continued commitment to advertising and letting others know, hey, we're here, Awaken exists, and we would love for you to come and see who we are and what we're all about. So that's our second step. Third, we are exploring fundraising opportunities, and we will have more to say in July about this as we formulate what this looks like and how you can get involved with these different opportunities. So probably towards the end of July, we'll be able to present to you, hey, here's some different opportunities and different ways that you can get involved in how we are looking to do fundraising for Awaken. Now, here is what we need from you, our Awaken members. One, we need your prayers. We need your support and prayer to be praying for Awaken and this church and our finances. So would love to have you pray on a regular basis for Awaken. Second, your continued financial support. Huge thank you to every single one of you for your financial support of Awaken throughout the years. And that is what has kept us going. So I thank you for your generosity. As a board, we thank you for your generosity in giving to Awaken because it's all through you. There is no outside sourcing. It's all through our members that Awaken has existed. We used to have outside sourcing in the beginning. That left after the first 2 years. And so it's all been member-driven. So thank you for keeping Awaken going for 15 years. And that's why we're still here today. The third is to spread the word about Awaken. Is there anyone you know who might be interested in coming and being a part of what we're doing? Is there anyone that you can think of that you can invite to Awaken, invite to check out what we're doing here that might be interested in joining and participating in Awaken? So spread the word. You can post about it on your TikTok, your Instagram, whatever social medias you have, however you're comfortable with. How can you help spread the word of Awaken? And then fourth, are there any creative ways that you can think of to raise funds? We had someone who has this, it's not ancient, but it's, Russian art in their basement. And they have donated it, and they said, we think this is worth some money. Why don't you go and explore this? And whatever you can sell it for, you can keep for Awaken. So are there any other creative ways that you can help to raise funds? And if you can think of anything, I've actually had someone else mention something to me today that I thought was a great idea. You can come and see me, present your idea, and we'll be talking about it as a board. But are there any creative ways that you can think of? Do you have any priceless artifacts in your basement that you can part with? Any other ways that you can help to raise funds for Awaken? And then I've been mentioning this for the past couple of weeks. We do need some more help with volunteers, specifically our kids ministry, looking for another teacher or two to get into the cycle. We have the curriculum, but we want to be a place where when families come, they can bring their kids and they're comfortable having their kids in another room, and the kids are learning in their own way what it means for them to follow Jesus. Having a kids ministry is probably one of the top 1-2 ways in order to grow a church here in Westchester County from every other pastor that I've spoken with. So having a kids ministry that is flourishing and thriving is extremely important, I believe, to our sustainability. And so we are still looking for volunteers on a monthly, quarterly, whatever kind of a basis, whatever you can offer. Would love to have volunteers for our kids ministry because we believe that it is a very, very important part of keeping Awaken going. So those are the 5 ways. Obviously, we'll roll more out as we move forward here. over these summer months. But what I want to do before we get to our final song is I do want to open it up for any questions. Normally, in the past, I've done these question series, and I know we talked about hearing God's voice, so if you have any questions about hearing God's voice, feel free to throw that out there. But also, any other question about the financial position of Awaken that I can help answer for you. Elle has some ideas. Cool. Anything you wanted to add, Christine? Cool. Yeah, Wanda. Yes. Yeah, so we do have a Zelle. I think on the back table we put a QR code for Zelle. Is that up pretty much every week? So you can always scan that, but there is it's the email address, treasure@awakenwestchester.com. And there's the QR code we do keep in the back by our offering box. Yes. Yep. At this point, we can guarantee through September. And then cautiously optimistic about October. Then it kind of, percentage goes down a bit from there, but we can guarantee through September. Yep. Sure, yeah, good question. I think all of that is up in the air. I think our preference would be to keep things going as they've been going, but if we get into July and August and things don't change, I think every option is on the table, and so we would be willing to explore whatever we can to keep it going, even if it morphed and looked a bit differently. Don't exactly know what it would look like. Our intent is to keep going, but we would do everything we can to keep it going, even if it looked differently. That's the best answer I can give at this time. Yeah.
So that cafe that you started
Yeah, after like 3 months in there, we realized the owner was illegally renting it to us. He was subletting, and then they found out about it, and so we basically got kicked out. So no, that cafe is not an option.
Meeting space is not easy to find. Affordable meeting space is even harder to find. And while you think you're renting a movie theater, this is a very reasonable place to be. On top of the location right off the parkway, so it's easy for folks to find. As far as parking goes, we've been in some places where parking's horrible. So, while moving to another location is a possibility, it's just not an easy to do.
Right. Yeah, most places that I've looked at in the past would be almost double the rent that we pay weekly here at Look. So, a park? Yeah. During COVID, we were outside through, I think, November, December. I mean, we kept it going for a while. Everyone was bundled up. Indoor would be ideal. All right, well, any other questions, please feel free to ask me. You can speak to Christine as our treasurer. And as I said, my commitment is to Awaken and to keeping this going. So you have my commitment to you and to this group.
Is there an easy way we can send ideas?
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can come talk to me. You can send me an email, dave@awakenwestchester.com. Send anything. We're going to meet as a board middle of July. So any ideas that are sent over, we'll definitely be looking at and exploring together. And please, we welcome your ideas.